Hello, I'm back. We're having some technical difficulties. It's my fault, not our producer's fault. I just want to make that very clear. It's entirely my fault. I'm a good director. I'm not a good live stream technical whiz. Anyway, thanks for joining us. I'm Isaiah Smallman, director of Live Not by Lies, the documentary series coming to you from Angel Studios very soon. And oh boy, that's my producer, Dave. Dave, he's messing everything up. Dave, come on, Dave. Anyway, here we are. I'm not going to talk for long because we pre-recorded a segment with Rod, who is currently traveling, and RJ, and that's really the meat of this episode. But I just wanted to jump on. I wanted to show you guys my ghost horse shirt here. I thought I'd whip that out. It's really given me a lot of inspiration. I feel like a little bit of a cowboy devoting my life to making this series. Not quite an outlaw, but kind of a cowboy, living on the edge. Anyway, it's been an incredible process. I'm so grateful. We already have quite a few people who are expressing interest in our new campaign, and that's really what this is all about. We are launching a new campaign soon. This is our opportunity to, at angel.com/live. Please go express your interest. Like I said, we've already got quite a few people doing it. And this is our chance to talk to more of you, spread the word even further than we've already gone before, and show you that we're pretty good at this. If you go to our angel.com/live, you can watch a brand new video that really lays out the problem that we've already been talking about, but also shows you lots of really cool stuff. I'd also encourage you to, at angel.com/live, poke around, especially the media gallery. There's some really interesting stuff that we've put up there. Lots of pictures and things like that. And just stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more content coming out. We actually just 3 days ago got all of our footage back. We were shooting a little 16 millimeter camera called a Bolex. You have to literally wind it up. It's kind of cool. And we finally got the footage back from that. It was being developed out in California, literally film. We still shoot on that sometimes. It looks really cool. So we're going to be releasing some of that so that you can see what that looks like. We did not have it in time to prepare for this, but we're really excited about this whole thing. So please go to angel.com/live, express your interest. We have a lot of work left to do. We made a ton of progress, but this is kind of a gigantic project, to be honest. It's two movies basically. So we have a massive amount of work left, and we really need your support of all kinds, not just financial. Please tell your friends. Please go support. But for now, I'm going to stick around, and I'm going to come back to do some Q&A. So please go ahead and submit your questions anywhere you're watching. Make sure to submit those, and I'm going to get to them. But in the meantime, we've got a little segment with Rod and RJ that we're going to show you and get into more of the stuff, and then I'll be back in a few minutes. But enjoy, and tell your friends. Tweet it out. Go to angel.com/live. Okay, off to Rod.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Live Not by Lies live stream, joined with by my friends Isaiah Smallman and Rod Dreher, who are relatively fresh off a exciting leg of production that's over in Eastern Europe that we're going to get into in a second. But Isaiah, Rod, how are you, and what's new?
Couldn't be better.
Well, I'm coming off a week of COVID, so everything's coming up COVID over here in Budapest. But it hasn't been as bad this time as it was the first time. So I'm thankful for small favors.
Yeah, so you're over in Hungary right now, Isaiah, as always, down in Chattanooga. I'm in the Nashville area. And we wanted to check in with you, the fans, give you some updates, give you some recaps of what's been going on, and share about what's coming next. But as always, we just want to say thank you for getting us to this point, which we will unpack here shortly. But it's exciting that things have been filmed, interviews have been conducted. We've been able to see still images and footage of what's already been captured. And we're on the cusp of some other exciting things that we'll get into. But before we get into just sort of, again, the recap of what's gone on and where we go from here, we are living in interesting times. We continue to. None of these things are going away. The themes of Rod's book, of the soft totalitarianism that's encroaching step by step and bit by bit all around the world. I don't know. I mean, Rod, there's a lot of things, a lot of ways we could go with this. And as we were talking about before we started, we're not looking to turn this into an Alex Jones podcast, but we're here to talk about the themes of encroaching totalitarianism and tech censorship and living not by lies in an age that seems to be filled with them everywhere. But one thing that stood out to me recently, and maybe both of you would love for you to comment, starting with Rod. I've been tracking some of the inner workings of the World Health Organization, and there is, I believe it's in May of this year, May of 2024, there will be some votes cast in the United Nations community of essentially ceding control over to the WHO in the case of any future pandemics, in the case of anything that they deem to be a public health risk. And so, again, both of you guys, but starting with Rod, a big concern of ours is how we have ceded much of the power and autonomy and freedom in our lives over to other governing bodies willfully, where in the past maybe it was taken from us, but we, in the name of comfort, in the name of worrying about health or other things that there might be some legitimate concerns around, that governments and other entities are starting to utilize that never waste a crisis sort of mentality. But Rod, I don't know, what are you experiencing over there? What are you hearing in Europe about some of these issues?
It's incredible because all of this is happening in the context of a period in which the European elites at the European Union and Brussels are afraid of populism. There will be elections continent-wide in Europe in June. And already you're hearing people like Ursula von der Leyen, who is the head of the European Union, start to sound the alarm that the people are the so-called far right, is coming, and we have to defend our democracy. And what she said, I mean, part of the WHO stuff, that's part of it too, like concentrating power within the managerial elites, while ordinary people don't understand what's happening. And the people that we actually vote for, they don't seem to be doing much about it. Well, von der Leyen gave a speech at the Davos, that's the big annual gathering of the World Economic Forum, all the world's elites. She gave a speech there in which she said the biggest threat to all of us now is not climate change, is not COVID or anything like that. The biggest threat is disinformation and misinformation. And that's the sort of thing that ought to make you swallow hard, because she's saying that if we good people, we Democrat, pro-democracy people don't control information, then everything is going to be threatened. So when I hear you talk about what the WHO is planning to do in advance of the next health crisis, I hear it in the context of a transnational elite in Europe, the US, and elsewhere who foresee that they are losing power. They stand to lose power to dangerous populists, like the farmers who are out busy protesting in Europe this late winter, and they want to stop it. This is something that plays directly into what we're talking about in Live Not by Lies. The idea that we are going to be forced, without even realizing what's happening, we're going to be forced to live by lies. And it goes down to something as small as what is happening with the Multiple Sclerosis Society of America. I don't know if you guys saw this. The MS Society fired a 90-year-old woman who was working for them because she misgendered somebody. A 90-year-old woman working at this charity. And I mean, again, it's a small thing, but it shows institutional capture. This is happening everywhere. And we have not reached peak woke yet. That's why it's so important for the people who are donating to this project to understand that this is not something that happened, addressing something that happened in the summer of Floyd in 2020 or during the COVID crisis. It's still happening. And it is, as you say, RJ, it is going to happen. The next time a big crisis comes up, the elites are already planning to control the information.
Yeah.
Well, and there's this new idea that I've seen thrown around a little bit called malinformation, which is really just a whole nother level. And it's basically saying now your speech could be considered not only just an extremist idea, but things you say can actually be used against you in a new way and in a new level because it's a threat to the establishment. It's a threat to the social order. And all these things. And of course, we've had some concept of that in the past, as any society should, but it's clearly intended as an infringement on normal free speech, which is the bedrock of any democracy, as we know. It's just, but it's wild. People are just accepting that.
Isaiah, specifically for you, because Rod, you cover this stuff. Obviously, you wrote a book that we're making a documentary series based on. But Isaiah, I'm curious, given your experiences, which again we're going to get into here shortly, of what it was like to go over and sit with folks and interview them and be in these cities that Rod wrote about. Anything as you came back home from that trip and you see headlines like this and you're reminded. How did that feel? Does it take on a new life for you personally to have seen and heard the stories and then kind of start to put, connecting dots in terms of what we're experiencing on a daily basis?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that struck me there and has continued to stick with me is there's this, I learning more about it. There's this whole period called normalization in kind of the Soviet world. And especially I learned about it more specifically in the Czech Republic. And there was just this whole period where like the sort of top down ironclad control that was very forceful and brutal wasn't necessary anymore because everybody just kind of did what they were told. That in a sense was its own dark period of that era. And I think, in a way, we're just kind of like leapfrogging right to that point, in the West. It's just like, yeah, just everybody will do what they're told, and yet, to Rod's point, we're not at peak wokeism yet. The irony, of course, is that I think we are starting to see the cracks in it in a more obvious way. I'll give you one very random anecdotal example that happened. I was at a restaurant recently and I was standing outside for a minute. And I was just eavesdropping on this conversation. And it was a couple and a trans person, and they were just talking about different stuff. And then the trans person had talked about how she was, had left a job because there was a hostile work environment and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not even commenting on any of that. But what came up was fascinating, which was the other guy said, basically part of the issue was, yeah, my boss was, talking bad, saying transphobic things about me behind my back. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Again, I don't know what was said. It almost doesn't matter because my point is what the next guy said was, yeah, it's crazy. People they'll just hire you because they need your identity for their bottom line. They hired you because they needed a trans person on their roster and you fit that category. And she was like, yeah, I know. Isn't that so crazy? And I'm sitting there thinking, that's exactly what they're being told to do. Like they're following the rules and now they're not following the rules because they don't like it a certain way. And I was like, it just hit me to hear ultra progressive people talking about the thing that in my mind, we're all supposed to do, which is have diversity, equity, inclusion, whether we like it or not, talking about how villainous these people are for hiring based on the way that you look because you look or the way you identify. And I was like, where is the end of all of this?
There's no way to win.
Completely bananas. Yeah.
No, there's no way to win. And, I just finished this week a brand new book called No Apologies by my friend Catherine Brodsky. Catherine is a liberal who got canceled. She's a bona fide liberal who believes in free speech. She got canceled and it was miserable for her. But out of that experience, she wrote a book that's just out, a series of interviews with people on the left and the right who got canceled, trying to figure out what are the lessons that the rest of us need to learn. And it was extraordinary as we're in the middle of filming Live Not by Lies to read about the kind of things that people who came through cancellation, the lessons they learned. It's the same kind of thing that we're learning, Isaiah, from the people we're interviewing over here in Eastern Europe, that you have got to be brave. You have got to not apologize for something you didn't do. They're going to try to make you apologize. Don't do it. Don't live by lies. You need a community of strong people who will stand by you. And you've got to be willing to suffer, to lose something for the sake of the truth. And all of these people, again, on the left and the right and in the middle, they all talk about what herd animals most people are, that most people will just go along to get along. will conform, will live by lies to protect their comfort, even so people don't even think bad about them. And so I'm excited to see No Apologies, though, the book come out, because it says to me that there are people waking up. Catherine Brodsky, the author, says in the introduction that her parents immigrated from the Soviet Union to Canada. And her mom and dad were telling her, what's happening now here in Canada, it's what we ran away from. And she didn't really believe it until it happened to her. So people are waking up, and this movie is gonna really accelerate that, I believe.
Yeah, we got to get Catherine in the series. It sounds like she'd have a great perspective for us to share with people on in that format. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. One thing that I came back with as well, I was very much challenged by the second nature. I don't even want to call it courage. And by the way, that's almost a word. Rod and I were kind of like, where did you find the courage? And they're like, what courage? You just do the right thing. And we're like, that's not normal, but these people, they just don't. But I was challenged by how second nature it was for many of the people that we spoke with to challenge an assumption, to disagree with someone, to
Kung Fu masters,
to just have a real debate about something. I was personally challenged by that because I realized how conditioned I've become to avoid conflict in that way. And I'm not like, again, I really try not to say things I don't believe. I've worked very hard at that. And yet I've realized that's still that's a step in the right direction, but I have to even push a little bit further to starting to challenge things that I hear. And what's interesting though, is it was never threatening. It was never aggressive or awkward to have those conversations, because it wasn't rooted in their identity. It was rooted in, there's an idea over here and there's an idea over here. Let's talk about it. Whereas here, if I challenge my cousin, I'll give you one example, on her wild ideas about who knows what, it becomes a very, very personal battle very quickly. And I'm just like, don't have time for that. Partly because I want to maintain some level of a relationship with her. And it's impossible. People will cut you out of their lives if you don't agree with them. And so I thought that was something that was really encouraging and fascinating. It was like, oh yeah, we can have debates. These are just ideas. We're allowed to talk about this stuff. And just because I may disagree with you, that's something that came up over and over. Just because I may disagree with you doesn't mean we have to hate each other. That's absurd. Where did that idea come from? And it is so deeply ingrained in who we've become as the West, I think.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I got to tell you, I'm older than you guys. I remember when I was in college, we had the old school liberalism where people still believed in exchange of ideas. Something happened in the early 2000s, I think, to flip that. And Chris Rufo, who does incredible work fighting wokeness, he had an article that came out a couple months back called The Cluster B Society. And in it, he talks about how we in the West have become the sort of society that valorizes and mainstreams the sort of mental illness that we see in cluster B, things like borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, things like that. And one of the main things Rufo argues about is the idea of making all, the idea that just talking about ideas and disagreeing with someone on the basis of their ideas amounts to personal rejection. He said people with borderline personality disorder can't argue about things because they take disagreement as personal insult. And when I read Rufo's thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, we are literally crazy. So there's that behind wokeness. There's some the normalization of traits that we used to believe as mentally ill, where we're being forced now to live by lies at the risk of, we're having to pretend that the crazy people among us are sane.
Wow. Yeah. Man, there's a lot there. And I'm thinking of many relatives and friends and neighbors, as you recount Chris Rufo's article, which I also read and I'd forgotten about, but that's a very salient point. So, okay, now that we've solved all the world's problems and identified them and all that's fixed, let's give our fans, our friends, people who have financially prayerfully supported us as we've been building out this project. Isaiah and the team headed over to Eastern Europe a few months back. And so, Isaiah, if you want to get us into, and then Rod, you jump in as well, what did that look like? Give a brief recap. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you guys eat? Most importantly, in my mind, and how did it all go? Let's give the fans a little taste.
What we need to do is continue to tell the story. We need to go back multiple times. We need to continue to dig deeper into all of these stories so that we can bring you the most comprehensive story. And so this is a great time for us to start to show you what we've already done. I mean, we didn't just take the money that was entrusted to us and just eat good sausages, although we did do some of that. We also made some incredible stuff and have some really great interviews. So there's going to be a really steady trickle of that coming out in the coming weeks. And so obviously stay engaged with us on socials as well. But in the meantime, yeah, I mean, we had, I don't know, probably Rod, 13, 14 interviews at least, as well as just some amazing opportunities to travel around these cities, Prague and Bratislava, and just learn about the history, capture beautiful images that help illustrate that history, and really start to just lay the groundwork for the process of turning this into a story. And that's really what we want to do. We don't want to just give you another history lesson. We want to turn this into a story. And to me, it's becoming very quickly, it's the story of soft totalitarianism here in the West. And how can we tell that story without going back to the roots of totalitarianism in the 20th century? So it's really like laying the foundation for all of that. And so much of it has been so terrific in terms of just, we didn't have to work hard to get people to sort of help us tell that story because they live it every day. I mean, that's something we've talked about a lot. It's right at the surface for them. A lot of them are just like, oh yeah, like, of course I'm available. Of course I can introduce you to this person. One of my favorite things is we wanted to interview Camilla Bendova, and we'll, talk more about her in coming episodes and content that we put out. But she was like, oh yeah, while you're here, I'm going to be doing a Q&A after a stage production about the effects of totalitarianism and the secret police on a family unit. And there was a play for children, high school students actually, and she was going to be speaking at that while we happen to be there. It wasn't like this is something she never does. It was just the serendipity of that proved to me people are living this stuff, and we really should be too. This should not be some peripheral thing that we're thinking about sometimes.
And we're about to go on this next phase of filming down to Romania to talk to people who lived through communism there. And Romanian communism was probably the most brutal of all in Europe. I mean, just the gulags there were just unspeakable. But one of the great things about the Romanians is they have a very different story to tell. I mean, it's the same story ultimately, but it's also a different story. And you'll get to see how the whole live not by lies scenario played out there and what they're dealing with now. I remember the first time I went to Romania was to do the Live Not by Lies book tour there a couple of years ago. And my publisher there, small publisher, said, listen, it's during COVID. We can't do anything indoors. We've got permission to meet in the backyard of a church in Bucharest. We'll be lucky to get 100 people there. If we sell 50 books, we'll be happy. We had 500 people there, and we sold 400 books. I mean, that's never happened to me anywhere, in America, anywhere. And the thing that blew me away about this was so many of these people told my publisher, because I didn't speak Romanian, they said, this is the first time we've had anybody from the West say, don't be ashamed of your Christian faith. Don't be ashamed of your traditions. Stand on them. I said, that's so weird. Not even the Conservative Party here would defend them. And they said, no, because the Conservative Party here wants so badly to kiss up to Europe, and anything that America, the American elites and the European elites say, they're all in favor of. So they're ashamed of the Romanians who believe in God and who want to follow their traditions. And so these people there today, and I'm not talking about 40 years ago, today, they find so much comfort and inspiration from Americans who want to come hear their story. So when we go there with the cameras, man, you guys need to be ready. It's going to bring tears to your eyes.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. Well, one thing I was going to add, this is totally on the fly, so producers will have to forgive me if I put us in a bind. But Rod, one thing I really want to do, I was Father Chad of St. Vladimir's Seminary here in the States was down at our parish this past weekend, and we started talking about the project. He mentioned he knows you. And anyway, Father Daniel of Romania came up, and I find that he's such a fascinating guy because he's actively right now trying to rebuild the Church of Romania after it was just gutted by, or attempted to be gutted by the Soviet powers that sort of empowered Ceausescu. So I think that would be such a fascinating thing to look at too, of like, how does the church get rebuilt? Because I have a feeling we're going to be in the same process at some point where we really have to start looking at the facts of one step at a time, trying to rebuild our church networks and things like that. So anyway.
So just to give a quick recap, and I should have done this before we launched into this section because I know people get confused and we get messages of people saying, okay, great. When's where's the film? What theater do I go to or whatever? People are busy and not sure how this process works. But again, just to recap where we stand, we ran a campaign in the fall. We raised a chunk of money. We've gone off to start production, which you guys have been referencing and alluding to. About 12 or 13 days, I believe, something in that range, over in Eastern Europe. The crew is now going to be going back and doing more filming. And in the meantime, we're about to enter what you are watching now is the commencing of another testing the waters phase where we generate interest and we see who wants to see more of this content. So it's all sort of building this pirate ship that we can all sail on the seas together. But for now, and in the our most immediate future is planning this next trip to go back to Eastern Europe to sit with more folks, to gather more. But as Isaiah, as you said, we're going to be releasing beautiful stuff to show people what we've already captured. And the hope is here that by the end of all these processes, and if you've been a previous investor or crowdfunder, an angel, you get how this works. But for those who haven't, it's taking bites of the apple. We'd all live to live in a world where all the money's just there and you go off and make a project. But when you're doing it in a community like this and you're building a fan base and you're building trust and you're providing content, it takes a little bit more time and work, and we're happy to do that. In terms of moving this conversation along and not wanting to take up too much more of our fans' time, Isaiah, what are some other things you are excited about? Technically speaking, what does it look like to not only what the filming we've done, what does the next round look like, and where do you see the story going from here? What excites you about what comes next?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the most practical things that I'm working on right now is we shot a lot of footage, and we're coming back and I'm working with our very talented assistant editor, Aaron, to start to catalog it all. And anyone who's ever worked on a large scale research project knows that, the foundation of the research is that phase is ridiculously important. And so I'm trying to take that very seriously so that we don't have gems kind of slip through the cracks. And a lot of what that looks like is I'm going through and transcribing interviews, and we're getting some of them translated when necessary. And we're cataloging everything that we've done and just making sure that all of it's right there. And I'm actually hoping I want to make a little behind the scenes video that sort of shows you my screen so that you can actually see like where all the footage lives and how we sort of approach a project like this. It's actually pretty fascinating, I think, to just sort of, it's a little bit like the note card approach, when you were in high school and you had to write a research paper. It's just that instead of note cards, there's like, hour-long interviews that need to be broken into chunks and things like that. So that's something I'm working on right now. But yeah, in terms of next steps, I mean, we're really excited about, Romania is a big part of this story going forward, I think, as is, Hungary, lots of other places. But we're identifying priorities. We're putting stuff together so that we can continue to gain more support and build a bigger following. And we're trying to figure out how do we tell this as a story? How do we make this really compelling so that all of you, when you finally have this finished product at your fingertips, are just ready and excited to share this with people who need to see this. And really, we want this to be a practical, useful thing that helps people not only learn their history, but then be empowered to organize and to stand up against this.
That's right. And one thing that excites me about this next round of filming, that I guess it excites me for a negative reason, but it's important, is what's happening in Great Britain and the UK. We had talked about going there to do some interviews with some folks who've stood up for the faith against a lot of pressure, but things have gotten so much worse there in the past couple of months since since October 7th, frankly, the Hamas massacre of the Israelis. In the UK, we have seen radical Muslims marching by the tens of thousands, the police unwilling to say anything about it, even though they're calling for the deaths of Jews, but the police at the same time cracking down on Christians who oppose this. Christians who preach in public, Christians who pray near abortion clinics, and so on and so forth. It's getting really, really bad there. And as much as I hate to see that, I'm excited that we will, the same people we are always going to interview, they'll be there. And I have a couple of more who are involved in this, who are Christians who are trying to sound the alarm, like, this is happening here. We are losing our religious liberty very, very quickly. Things are accelerating there. And it's important that Americans see this. I want us to, in this film, to be a voice of advocacy for our British brothers and sisters in the faith, but also a voice of warning, like that what happens in Britain is not going to stay in Britain. It's moving fast into Canada now, and it's going to come to the United States. Also, I didn't even tell you guys this. I found out that we at the institute that I work at here in Budapest, the think tank, the Danube Institute, we're holding a free speech conference on March 18th. You might be over here then. Päivi Räsänen will be there. She is the brave Lutheran woman, former state minister, member of parliament in Finland, who has been through 2 trials, acquitted twice in Finland on hate crimes charges for quoting the Bible. She's been acquitted twice. The prosecutor there is so full of hatred for the faith and so vindictive that they're going to put her on trial a 3rd time. Päivi is the most gentle, faith-filled woman. We need to get her on camera to talk about the fact that this can and will happen in a liberal democracy like Finland.
Wow.
That is shocking.
Yeah, it speaks to the urgency of this subject matter and what we are trying to accomplish. So, thank you for sharing that, and we will absolutely be tracking her story. And I wasn't aware of that, but as you say, it's not staying put. These ideas are fluid, right? They are transnational. They cross borders and boundaries. And when intellectual elites, political elites start to see that other countries are getting away with things like that, it only entices and encourages them to maybe pursue similar policies. Well, let's wrap up here shortly, but I want to end on something of a fun, lighter note. Rod, obviously you're well versed in media, being interviewed, all that sort of thing. But this, as I understand, this is the first documentary film project that you're a part of. What was it like to watch the film crew come over, for your book to come to life, for the guys to get to meet people that you interviewed and you care so much about? How much fun was that to see all this really, come into actual existence and not just theory anymore?
Part of it was fun. I'm not going to lie about that, but mostly it really touched my heart, because it's one thing to tell the stories of these people on the printed page. I tried my best to do a good job with it. I think I did about as good a job as anybody can with the written word. But it's so different to be there in the apartment where all of these brave men and women of the resistance in Prague, for example, met. The apartment hasn't changed since the end of the Cold War. We're talking about Kamila Bendova's apartment. And to hear the voices of these people, this sweet woman, Kamila Bendova, she's got this mousy little voice, but she is an iron lady. She was tough as nails. And I think that it's going to be a completely different experience for the people who like the book, Live Not by Lies, to actually see the faces and hear the voices and see the streets on which all of this happened. Isaiah and the crew went to the place on Wenceslas Square there in Prague, where in, I think it was 1968 or 69, a young
early 69, I think.
Yeah, a young student named Jan Palach doused himself with gasoline and set himself on fire to protest the Soviet occupation of his country. And this was a monumental event in the life of that nation, that this young man sacrificed himself for the country. They have marked the place where his body lay. It is a holy place to the Czech people. We got to go there and see that and film it. And man, I get chills just thinking about it now. Americans need to be shown it, because you know what? We did not get shown this after the Cold War ended. All of that history was swept under a rug. Why? I don't know. It was convenient to some people to not pay attention to it. We got to pay attention, because the very stones in Wenceslas Square have lessons for us.
Man, that's so powerful. And I love that story. And then I was chuckling to myself of how I teed that up for let's end on a lighter moment, and you shared the story about the guy lighting himself on fire. But no, I didn't mean to make light of it at all. I just, and you captured it so well, and that's a great answer. And I'm excited for us, for you, for your fans, that this is happening, that, things are being filmed, experiences are being had. I know our cinematographer, Brad, not to throw him under the bus, but he had an emotional moment of connectivity with his family, being in the basement where the printing press was hidden and other things like that. And just, it's thrilling. And I'm sure there's so many fans watching this and who've been following us and will continue to, that it's like, wow, I read this book a few years ago and now the guys are there bringing it to life.
Well, here's the light moment in all this. It's such an occasion of joy and gratitude to God that finally this story is being magnified. The book sold 200,000 copies in the U.S., but this film is going to tell these same stories in an even more powerful way to a vastly larger audience. And, you get tears in your eyes, not because it's sad, but because by the grace of God and by the generosity of those who donate to make this possible, these people are not going to, these brave men and women who stood in the breach and would not live by lies and would not bend and yield to the communists, stood there and took it for the sake of Christ. Their stories will not be forgotten. They're not going to go down the memory hole. They're going to be preserved forever in film. And you just got to sit back and say, thank you, Lord. And thank you to all of you who have been so generous to us, because we're all in this together. This is the church being the church.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah,
Isaiah, do you want to...
Well, good.
No, I was going to say, take us out here. Any parting words, any parting thoughts? And also, if you want to, give the audience a little encouragement of what we need from here on out, continued support, et cetera. But yeah, take us out.
Yeah. All I was going to add is Rod's right. I mean, we really owe, as always, we shouldn't ever go a minute without attempting to be grateful, but this is such a giant thing that I'm so grateful for right now. And I'm grateful for it personally. I can't imagine working on a more meaningful project, and the fact that I get to be a part of this and helm it is humbling and honoring. And it's just great. But I'm grateful as a citizen. I'm tired of trying to have this conversation with people in an abstract way. I want to sit them down. I want to show it to them, and I'm antsy to get this thing done. I want this to exist. I'm making this for people like me and people like Rod and RJ and all of you who are watching this right now. I know all of you feel the same way. We need tools. And to Rod's point, the book was a raging success, but at the same time, it's very difficult to get people to connect with stories that are written. Now, it's not to say some people don't. I love it. But there are people who are not going to do that. And I think this could reach a whole nother group of people. That's really exciting. And again, it'll be a fresh experience for people who read the book. It will be completely new, as Rod pointed out. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'm antsy to keep going. So this phase really is about saying, once again, you are supporting this project. We need your support. We're not done. The first campaign was very successful, but it was not complete. And so what we're asking for is additional support. Now, the beauty of this is, I think we've done a lot to show everyone at this point that we're not only not charlatans, but that we're not incompetent. And look, as a filmmaker, I know this is hard. I'm skeptical of people's ability to pull this kind of thing off. It's Rod saw, it's quite a production.
Oh, it is.
And a lot of stars have to align for it to actually work out. I'm telling you, it's working out great. And it's not that I was ever like, oh, it's not going to work out, but you just never quite know. But when we were on the ground, everything was clicking. The people, the subjects, the crew, the stories, all of it was coming together. And that, to me, as a filmmaker, I know how rare that is. We found that this is something we have to keep going on. And the benefit for this round of support, you get to see part of what we've already done. You don't have to take this risk on this completely hypothetical thing. We've shown we are incredibly trustworthy. We're incredibly professional. We're incredibly driven, and we are going to make this happen. All we need is your financial support and your prayers, and for you to tell your friends. Please do that for us, because this is so important, and we're going to do our part, but we really need you to join us.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Great to catch up, and we'll be back more in the coming weeks. We'll be back with a bunch of stuff and things that we've been alluding to. You'll get to see images, video, etc. But yes, please, angel.com/live. Tell your friends, share it on Twitter, Facebook, and if you're so inclined, click the support button and let us know what you're able to contribute to our efforts here. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you guys.
We're back. Hello, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that discussion. I know I did. Rod's such a great... So, I mean, RJ's a great guy, but I just love Rod's vibe. Anyway, I think we have some fun questions to dig into. I've not looked at really what we've got, but I think Micah has them ready, and I am ready to be on the hot seat. John Peterson says, do you guys have any projections of when you hope to come out with the first part? Great question, John. I want to answer this carefully because this is live. Later this year. I'm going to go with that. Later this year. Sometime later this year. Honestly, it depends on how much support we can get right now. It depends on, how our travels go. One thing we are debating is, do we release it all at once? Do we release it in chunks? That is to be determined. I think we're just trying to figure out what's the best thing for the project right now. But I'm going to go with later this year as a hope, not a promise. Next question. MJ, if this upside down world gets more chaotic, is there a plan you've decided on? One where you can keep going? Great question. And I'm assuming that's kind of in reference to the project specifically. Yeah, that's part of why we want to get everything filmed ASAP. I mean, gosh, it's so funny because it's not funny at all. I can feel myself thinking, don't be alarmist when I say these things to myself, but who knows? We might not be able to, we already can't go to Russia. We can't really go to Ukraine. I mean, who knows what could happen? Who knows what might end up being off limits? I try not to think too much about it, but yeah, who knows how freely we would be able to distribute this series. I don't really know. And so I'm trusting that we live in the kind of country where we're a ways away from really getting shut down. But as we've said before, I mean, we've been through the ringer with things I did not expect, like our ads getting canceled. They're like, this is they just take them off, and we're like, what, why, and it's because it's too political or something. And we're just saying things that are like, yeah, maybe communism's not a great way to go. And apparently that's too political. You'd be shocked at what was considered too political. Thankfully, our torch video seems to get through. I don't know how. So anyway, there's some weird, yeah. I think we just got to keep trucking. We grassroots, that's why we need the crowd. That's why we need all of you guys. We need your support because, we want to make this thing uncancelable. And I think we're well on our way. That's part of the reason we're so excited to have Angel on our side. Angel knows how to deal with some of this, some of these shenanigans, and we're committed to doing it. And we're committing to seeing this through no matter what happens. But again, we want to do it right. We want to do it in a way that this is going to be a meaty, beautiful, long-lasting piece that people are just thrilled to have around and show their kids and show in schools and churches. And to do that, we do need some more time. We need more travel. We need more support. So, on a personal level, I'm just thinking I gotta get organized. I gotta know what I think. I gotta know what I believe. I gotta know what's going on here. I gotta be careful, like we were discussing, not to fall sort of unconsciously into some of these patterns and these thought patterns that are starting to rule people's lives. So that's kind of a two-part answer for you. Okay, next question. Mary Jo Parks, what's the most challenging aspect of conducting these interviews? Great question. There's sort of a practical side of this, which is, okay, here's how we do the interviews. I had this fun idea. I don't know if this is a thing that other people do necessarily, but my idea was we have a translator, because a lot of these interviews are in Czech, Slovak, they'll be in Romanian. I don't speak any of these. So what we did is we have our whole crew is in one room, okay? And then we have a translator sitting in another room somewhere far enough away that their sound is not going to come into the mics. And then I have an earpiece. Rod has an earpiece. Rod and I kind of tag team some of the interviews. And our translator gets a feed of what the person is saying so that they can translate. And they have their own mic, okay? And then we have a fixer typically in any country we're in, and they're also, or our sound person is kind of acting as the in-room translator. Okay, so here's how it goes. I say, tell me about your childhood or whatever. Great question. Just kidding. And they go off and check, and I have no idea what they're saying. But immediately the translator starts translating, and that goes into my earpiece, right? Now, what's hard about it, and actually it records a track because they have a mic. So now I have the translated recording. Now, what's hard about that is translating in real time is incredibly difficult. And even when you have a very high level professional translator, it's not perfect, and there's anywhere from like a 3 to 15-second delay, because you don't think about it when we're talking, but sometimes it takes a minute to get to the point. And when languages are organized differently, you have to kind of wait for them to finish before you actually know how to turn it into the other language. And so I'm sitting there trying to be an engaging conversation partner, but I'm anywhere from 3 to maybe sometimes even more like 15 seconds behind. And so then they stop talking and I just have to sort of say, oh, okay, hold on. Yes. And then I say it. And so the point is, generating the authenticity of the moments is very challenging, but it's something that we've gotten a lot better at, even just with a couple tries. And what I love about it is it's much more authentic than the typical method, which is a translator's right in the room and I say my question, they translate it, but then they have to keep stopping the person. They have to say, hold on, I can't remember 3 minutes of you monologuing. But sometimes that's where you get the best stuff. You want them to be able to be natural. You don't want them to be remembering constantly that they're in a movie. You want them to be thinking that they're sitting down having coffee with a nice young man who wants to hear their story. So that's been one of the most challenging things, but it's overall a very positive thing. And I'm very excited about what it's going to bring to the series. It's kind of an innovative method that we are trying out. But beyond that, these are heavy subjects. These are things that people are eager to talk about, but it's hard, it's hard to dig into these things day after day. And, to make people feel comfortable discussing them. It's kind of hard to get people to be comfortable on camera when they're talking about nothing. So getting them to share these things can be challenging. But again, I think we're making great progress. Rod and I both have worked hard at learning how to interview and learning how to make people feel comfortable. So that's probably the most challenging thing, is sort of the language cultural barrier. But there's other aspects of it too. Okay, next question. Emily says, my favorite question is, are you having fun directing this project? Emily, I'm so glad you asked. Yes, I am. I'm having the time of my life. I don't know that I've ever had more fun directing a project than when we were in Europe. I will be honest, these parts of this phase, the kind of waiting phase, there I am, I'm director Isaiah Smallman. These kind of waiting phases are difficult. I love being on set. I love being in kind of the hustle and getting new stuff. I am very antsy to start editing. I'm I'm not going to promise that I'm editing it. I am an editor by trade, so I'm debating whether or not I'm going to edit this. But anyway, I am antsy to start editing, but the thing is I want to wait and see what the story shapes into. And I've got I don't know, it's long. It's like a 30-page outline of what I think the story is going to be. But I've made enough movies now that I know that it's better to kind of just let the dust settle a little bit, get a little distance from things, find out what story is kind of bubbling up to the surface, and not impose your will on it all the time. And so that's something I'm really trying to do. So the patience part is hard for me. I am very excited to get back to Europe. But no, I'm having a fun time. And honestly, part of it's because I have such a great team, like an awesome team. I love everyone on the crew. I love our UPN, our production manager. I love our DP. I love our other camera guy. I love Rod. I love Dave, who's our producer. I love RJ, who's our producer. Like, honestly, a lot of the stuff I've made, I've done a lot of these roles by myself, not all of them, but a lot. And so these waiting periods in between big production phases have been very difficult because it's a lot of me sitting around by myself, and I don't have Dave to call and say, Dave, we got to get back on the road. What was it? What's going to happen with this? And he's like, it's all fine, Zay. Don't worry about it. That's what happens now. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's just me talking about rambling around in this office here, just getting overwhelmed. So I am having an absolute blast. And honestly, I've never made a thing where I get to connect with the audience before it's made. It's an absolutely incredible experience. I mean, the last documentary I made, I've gotten to share it with a few audiences at festivals, but I've been working on that thing for going on 4 years and barely anyone's seen it because I haven't distributed it yet. And so and I have so much energy when I come away from those conversations. And so things like this live stream are such a great opportunity for me to get to connect with people. And I am just so grateful for that privilege. But I mean, what a cool thing I get to do. I get to go to Europe. I get to interview these great heroes. I get to tell a story I care about. I can't imagine anything that would be more fun than this. So yes, I'm absolutely having a blast. Okay, next question. One more question, I'm being told. Perfect. All right. Oh, it came up and then disappeared. Catherine says, what are the biggest challenges coming your way in the next stages of creating this series? Great question. Biggest challenges, other than the things that are kind of out of our control, like geopolitical craziness. Biggest challenges are, well, it's this big unwieldy story. And the beauty of this is that we have absolutely no shortage, not even close to a shortage, of amazing stories and amazing subjects and amazing historical moments to dig into and amazing contemporary moments to dig into. Every week, something comes up in a news article, or someone sends me something, or Rod's having a discussion with somebody about somebody who would be an amazing subject because they just recently got canceled unjustly, or because they are being, like we mentioned, because they're being, prosecuted for basically being a Christian, that kind of thing. That's coming up a lot. And so now part of the challenge is like, how do we decide what's the most important thing? We're going to Romania. Romania is a big place. We're going to go to Arad and Timișoara, which is going to be really exciting. It's kind of the place where the revolution began. We've got some really great connections there to some people who have been running an orphanage for a long time to sort of save kids out of the classic Romanian style horror orphanage. Then they've been there for a long time. But there's so many more stories. And every country has such a different story and such a different version of what totalitarianism looked like and how they've recovered from it, let alone every person within that country. And so the biggest challenge we have right now is deciding what's the most important next step. Not necessarily what's the most important next step, next step, but the next step, like immediately. What's going to make, not the cut, but what's going to make the schedule. It's very difficult to decide because we are so blessed to have so many supportive subjects, so many supportive partners who are saying, here's another thing you could look at. And so as a director and as a producing team, we really have to, we can't go everywhere. I wish we could. I wish we could spend 3 years filming and just make like a 20-part series, but that's just not realistic. So a lot of it, the biggest challenge is just kind of smushing it all into a shootable schedule and a cohesive story. But I thank you all so much for coming. Micah also let me know that there was a question about my ghost horse shirt, and I just wanted to say I don't know where you can buy this ghost horse shirt. It's a Wrangler brand, I can tell you that, but I bought it on a porch. There was a person selling clothes on their porch, and I bought it from their porch. Yes, there we go. Dane says, where did I buy the ghost shirt? Dane, you got to find a porch in Chattanooga selling this. And there may have only ever been one. This could be the only one of these that actually exists. I don't know for sure. I don't have any evidence to the contrary, though. Anyway, on that note, I am so grateful for all of you for tuning in. If you're catching this after the fact on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else, it's not too late to ask questions. Please go ahead and do that. And go to angel.com/live. We've had a lot of people supporting just during this live stream. I'm overwhelmed by the support we've already received in previous campaigns. And I really think we can do even bigger numbers on this one because, I don't know how many thousands, but I want to say like we're getting close to double digits, if not past, of genuine supporters, financial and just in other areas. And that is an amazing number, but we would just love to keep driving it up because that's how we're going to, again, kind of survive no matter what happens and be able to bring this series to you no matter what takes place. So we are so grateful for your support. Angel.com/live. Go there now if you haven't already. Express your support and tell your friends. We'll be putting out some new content. Follow us on Facebook. That's a great way to stay in touch. Instagram. We're putting out lots of great stuff. And like I said, I'm really excited to start releasing some of this 16 millimeter film. It's pretty cool. And at some point soon, I want to do a little video if you're interested in kind of the behind the scenes stuff. This is a little nerdy, but I want to sort of show you how all the editing works and all that kind of stuff. I probably already mentioned that. But anyway, thank you guys so much. And we'll be back soon with more.
I remember standing on a street corner in Moscow talking to a white-haired, elderly Russian Baptist pastor, a man whose father and the fathers of all the men in his community when they were little were taken away by Stalin and sent to Siberia. He said, go back to America and tell the church, if you're not prepared to suffer for your faith, then your faith is worthless. Well, what did he mean by that? Through every generation of Christianity, even today in countries like Egypt, in the Muslim world, and in China, Christians are suffering for their faith. It is vital that we get this eyewitness testimony on camera so people in our country will not forget history, that they'll know history and they'll learn from history so that we can build the resistance now while we still have the freedom to do so. Eventually, this whole system of lies will fall apart. But it will take longer for it to fall apart if people are afraid to stand up for the truth. If people are afraid to have the courage to resist, to say, you do to me whatever you can, I will not live by lies.